Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We finally made it to the end of the week. And I gotta say, the energy here in the studio is a little frantic today.
Frantic is one word for it, yeah.
Definitely. But it's a good kind of frantic. Just a quick personal note before we jump in. The team is actually heading out to New York City tomorrow morning. We are so excited.
It's finally happening. I know. It's been on the calendar for months, and my bags are like half-packed in the hallway, right?
Exactly. So because we'll be in transit and, getting set up, there is going to be a brief pause in new content for just a couple of days. We will be back online early next week, but we really couldn't leave you hanging over the weekend.
No, not with this news.
Especially not with what dropped out of the White House yesterday, because, frankly, this isn't just a headline. It's a seismic shift.
It really is. It's one of those moments where you see geopolitical strategy and economic warfare just collide in a way that's going to ripple through everything. We're talking energy markets, sovereign debt, the USMCA, the whole thing.
We are talking, of course, about the massive development yesterday, Thursday, January 29th. President Trump signed an executive order declaring a national emergency regarding Cuba. Now, usually when we hear sanctions on Cuba, it kind of feels like old news.
Right, 60 years of it?
Yeah, but reading through this feels different.
It is fundamentally different. This isn't just, freezing some assets or restricting travel. This is the weaponization of the U.S. tariff system against other countries.
So not Cuba directly.
Exactly. It's a mechanism designed to punish anyone. And let's be honest, we are specifically looking at Mexico here, who sells oil to Cuba. It's a tertiary sanction. It's effectively an energy siege.
And the timing is what makes this so urgent. We've got the fallout from the Maduro abduction earlier this month, the Cuban energy grid that is, literally collapsing. And this high-stakes game of chicken over the USMCA review. So let's unpack the what first. What exactly did the president sign?
Okay, so technically, it's an executive order that leverages the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. The order declares that Cuba is an unusual and extraordinary threat to U.S. national security.
Okay, that's standard language.
It is. The text cites, alignment with hostile powers, support for malign actors, all that. But the teeth of this order, the part that has Wall Street lawyers working overtime this morning, is the mechanism itself.
Right, because usually sanctions list specific people, like Company X is blocked or General Y. This seems broader.
Much broader. It authorizes the U.S. government to impose ad valorem tariffs on goods from any country that directly or indirectly provides oil to Cuba.
Okay, pause on that for a second. Ad valorem. For those of us not deep in trade law, break that down. What's the practical difference?
Sure. An ad valorem tariff is just a percentage of the value of the goods. It's not a flat fee. So if the market price of, say, Mexican auto parts goes up, the tax bill goes up right along with it.
So it scales, it hurts more.
It hurts a lot more. It cuts directly into margins, and it gives the administration a massive amount of leeway.
A leeway how?
It gives the secretaries of commerce and state the discretion to look at a country like Mexico and say, okay, we see a tanker leaving Veracruz for Havana. Because of that, we're slapping a 25% tariff on your next shipment of steel to the U.S. It turns trade policy into a precision weapon.
And Trump was not subtle about this. I was looking at his post on Truth Social yesterday, and the caps lock was definitely on. He wrote, quote, "There will be no more oil or money going to Cuba, zero."
Yeah.
And he warned them to make a deal before it is too late.
That zero oil part is the operational goal. See, unlike traditional sanctions, which can take years to prosecute in court, tariffs can be applied by the executive branch almost immediately. It's not a scalpel, it's a sledgehammer.
But to understand why this sledgehammer matters right now, we have to look at the supply side. Why is Cuba suddenly running out of oil? For years, Venezuela was their lifeline. What happened?
Well, the relationship didn't break. The logistics did. It all pivots back to January 3rd. That was the day of that U.S. military operation that resulted in the capture or abduction, depending on who you ask, of Nicolas Maduro.
Right, we covered that when it happened. But remind us of the scale of the loss for Cuba. When Maduro was taken, what happened to the oil flow?
The oil bridge between Venezuela and Cuba it collapsed instantly. We are talking about a loss of somewhere between 35,000 and 46,500 barrels per day.
Wow. And how much of their daily need is that?
That was their daily need. That was their lifeline. That was the fuel running their power plants. Without that Venezuelan crude, the entire island's energy grid just destabilized.
So, of course, if your main supplier goes dark, you look for the next closest option. And that brings us to Mexico.
Exactly. Mexico was the logical next step. They're close. They have the state-owned oil company, Pemex. So after Venezuela cut out, Mexico started filling the gap, sending roughly 20,000 barrels per day.
But this executive order is basically a giant do not enter sign aimed right at Mexico City. Is it actually stopping shipments? Or is this just, threats on paper?
Oh, it's stopping them. You just have to look at the Swift Galaxy incident a couple of weeks ago.
The Swift Galaxy?
It's a tanker. It was scheduled to lift a shipment from Pemex to Cuba. Mid-January, it was suspended. The shipment it never happened.
Due to the threat.
Fear. Pure fear of U.S. retaliation. Even before the ink was dry on this order, the threat was in the air. Now that it's official, the risk profile for a company like Pemex is just off the charts.
This puts Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum in a brutal spot. Politically, she can't look like she's taking orders from Washington.
It's a domestic nightmare for her. She's calling the shipments a sovereign decision, citing humanitarian reasons. She has to say that for her base. But the economic reality is, it's undeniable. Trump isn't just threatening random sanctions. He's leveraging the USMCA.
The big trade deal. The NAFTA replacement.
Right. And here's the kicker. There's a mandatory review of that deal coming up in 2026. This year, Trump is signaling that he's willing to use Cuba as a bargaining chip in that review.
So the message to Mexico is, what, keep the lights on in Havana, and we might just blow up your most important trade agreement.
Precisely. It's a choice between solidarity with a historic ally or the stability of the entire Mexican export economy. And right now, based on the Swift Galaxy, it looks like Sheinbaum is blinking. Deliveries have slowed to a trickle.
It creates this chaotic feedback loop. The humanitarian crisis creates political instability, which creates market volatility. And that volatility is exactly what we need to parse next. If you're holding Mexican debt or shipping stocks, this isn't just a political story. Let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll dig into the specific tickers and sectors getting hit.
Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Just a quick reminder before we get back into the analysis. If you are enjoying what you are hearing today, we do invite you to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and maybe comment on what topics you'd like us to cover next.
And in the description, you'll find that PayPal link if you want to support this project. Your contribution really does help us keep creating this content. We don't ask for more than the price of a coffee. So thank you for your support.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Okay, let's put on our investor hats. We have a lot of listeners who are market watchers.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at this situation, national emergency, tariffs on Mexico, instability, what are the specific risks I need to be hedging against?
I'd say there are three main buckets here: sovereign debt, shipping, and legal risk. Let's start with the debt. You have to be watching Mexican sovereign spreads and specifically Pemex bonds.
Because if the U.S. imposes tariffs, Pemex's revenue takes a hit.
It's even more direct. Pemex is already drowning in debt. So if there's what we call a USMCA friction premium applied, meaning if investors think trade relations are getting worse, the cost of borrowing for Mexico goes way up. We're already seeing those spreads widen.
So if a tanker sails, Pemex bonds drop.
You can expect the yields to spike. It's a direct correlation.
Okay, what about shipping? You mentioned the Swift Galaxy getting spooked. Is that an isolated case, or is the whole industry pulling back?
The whole industry is effectively boycotting. This is where the insurance market comes in. The big protection and indemnity clubs, the P&I clubs that insure these massive vessels, they're starting to invoke what are called sanction limitation and exclusion clauses.
Translate that for us.
It means that if a vessel even just refuels in a Cuban port or carries Cuban cargo, the entire insurance policy might be void.
From the start.
Ab initio, from the very beginning. No ship owner is going to risk an uninsured vessel worth hundreds of millions of dollars to deliver one load of oil. It creates a toxic zone in the Caribbean.
So even if Mexico wanted to send oil, they might not find a ship willing to actually carry it.
Exactly. The logistics are being strangled by the insurance writers in London and New York before a ship even leaves port.
Wow. Okay, you also mentioned legal risk. This feels like a wild card. The executive order uses IEPA to impose tariffs. Is that even, legal?
That is the multi-billion-dollar culture. The Supreme Court is currently reviewing a case on the scope of IEPA. The core question is, can the president use a national emergency to levy taxes, which is what tariffs are, without Congress explicitly saying yes?
That seems like a pretty big constitutional fight.
It's huge, and a ruling is expected mid-2026. Here is why investors need to watch. If the court rules against the administration, this entire tariff weapon could be declared illegal.
And if that happens, what does the market do?
Chaos. You'd have companies trying to claw back booties they already paid. You'd have total uncertainty about whether the USMCA threats are even valid. And markets hate uncertainty more than bad news.
So what's the safe haven play here?
Well, you're seeing gold rise right now. When you have trade war escalation, and let's be clear, this is trade war for investors run to gold, it's seen as a hedge against the instability of the whole system.
Okay, so the financial chokehold is tight. Let's pivot back to the ground. We talked about the blackout numbers, but what does this actually look like for people in Cuba right now? We're hearing comparisons to the special period in the 90s. Is it that bad?
The data suggests it might actually be worse. The special period happened when the Soviet Union collapsed. But back then, the infrastructure was 30 years younger. Today, we are seeing a structural collapse of the grid itself.
What does structural collapse mean?
It means they aren't just running out of fuel to burn. The plants themselves are breaking down and they can't get them restarted. Reports we're seeing indicate Cuba has only about 15 to 20 days of oil reserves left, as of right now. And the blackouts are lasting 12 to 20 hours a day.
20 hours a day without power.
Correct. Imagine that. You have power for maybe 4 hours. That's not enough to keep food from spoiling in your fridge. Not enough to pump water. Hospitals are struggling. It's a genuine humanitarian crisis happening in real time.
And the political situation there isn't stable either. I remember the protests in 2021 were huge.
They were historic. And the regime's response was brutal. There are still over 1,000 political prisoners locked up from that. The executive order actually cites this. But the real risk here, and this is what people in Florida are watching, is migration.
If the lights go out and stay out, people won't just sit there.
They can't. If the grid fully collapses, you're going to see a mass exodus towards the U.S. It's only 90 miles of water. If life becomes unlivable, people will take to rafts. It's a very high probability.
So what about other players? Cuba has friends. Russia, China, are they stepping in?
They're providing symbolic aid, some food, a little cash, but they haven't filled that Venezuelan oil gap.
Why not? They have the oil.
It's logistics and, economics. It is incredibly expensive for Russia or China to ship enough oil that far consistently to keep a country running. And frankly, with their own issues, do they want to heavily subsidize a failing Caribbean grid just to poke the U.S.? The answer so far seems to be no.
In Europe. The EU usually pushes back on this stuff.
The EU is in a tricky spot. They're concerned about this extraterritorial reach, the U.S. telling European companies who they can trade with. They're weighing their anti-coercion instrument to push back.
But will they actually do anything?
It's doubtful. I mean, are they really going to go to the mat for Cuba against the U.S. and risk their own trade relations? Probably not. They'll issue statements, but they won't break the siege.
So it all comes down to the U.S. endgame. What is the actual goal here? Is it just to squeeze them, or is this bigger?
I think we are seeing what some are calling the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. The goal appears to be internal capitulation.
You mean regime change?
Essentially, yes. They want the pressure to be so intense that the regime either fractures from within or is forced to the table to make concessions that fundamentally change the government. It's not containment anymore. It's an attempt to force a conclusion.
A high-stakes blockade where energy is the weapon and trade deals are the collateral.
It is. And the scary part is we don't know where the breaking point is. A powerless, starving population is unpredictable, and a regime with its back against the wall is dangerous.
It's a really sobering thought. We're watching this unfold in real time, and the shockwaves are hitting everything from Pemex bonds to insurance markets in London.
Absolutely. The next few weeks, as those 15 days of reserves tick down, will be decisive.
So here's the thought I want to leave all of you with today. With the Venezuelan oil bridge gone, and Mexico apparently backing down under these tariff threats, is this the moment the Cuban regime actually fractures? Or does this just trigger a massive humanitarian migration crisis that lands right on U.S. shores? Is the strategy breaking the regime, or are we just breaking the people?
That is the question, and I don't think the answer is in a policy paper. It's ticking down on a clock in Havana right now.
We will be watching closely. And with that, we reach the end of today's deep dive. We hope you liked it, learned something new, and will join us for the next one.
Thank you very much, and we will meet again very soon.
Remember the PayPal link in the description if you want to help us out.
Thanks once again. Have a great weekend, everyone. We are off to New York, so we'll see you in a couple of days.
Hi, everyone.